Before I bring up Claire Wasserman, who was absolutely fantastic, I want to ask everybody one quick question. By a show of hands, who feels that they do not get paid what they deserve? Everyone else is lying. Everyone else is lying, you're all the devil, because we all feel that we do not get paid what we deserve. But this is what's great, is that Claire is going to help us out with that. So Claire Wasserman is the founder of Ladies Get Paid. That's an awesome name. Career development platform for women. Last year, she traveled the country hosting town halls for thousands of women to talk about money, work, and self-worth. The best thing I can do is get off the stage and welcome Claire Wasserman.
My fight song, take back my life song.
So I have to admit something. I feel like I'm in AA and I just kind of have to get this off my chest. I have not driven a car in almost 14 years. Yeah, I know, somebody like almost fell off their chair. Okay, so I live in New York City, so it wasn't like a DUI or anything. I just have been living. Is anyone else from New York? No, right? Okay, so New York, right, we're taking the subways and Ubers, and I also didn't really drive much before. But, oh, thank you. How does this work, by the way? The green one? Okay, cool. A car, I don't know how to work, and this I don't know as well. So a few months ago, Cadillac actually brought me out to Las Vegas, and they said, we're gonna put you behind a car on a racetrack, you're gonna go really fast. And I told them that I didn't have my driver's license, I'd never driven on a highway, and they said, don't worry, we got somebody. They're gonna sit next to you, like, you've got this. And I'm here, so obviously I did get it. I did it probably a few times, and I just remember sitting in this car and feeling, I'm putting my foot on the pedal, and I almost can't believe that it's driving this fast, that I'm doing it. It was this really kind of out-of-body experience. And how much kind of freedom that I had and control and power. And I think the best part of that experience was I didn't get the car, but I did make a very good friend, which is Scotty Reese, A Girl's Guide to Cars. And she's the reason that I'm here and why somebody who hasn't really driven in 14 years can get up on stage. So my organization, I started it 2 years ago. We've got now about 25,000 women in the community from 50 states now and almost 60 countries. So the reason I'm telling you that is I've seen about 6,000 of them in person. I promise you, whatever you are going through at work, okay, whatever challenges, struggles, those women have told me something very similar, if not the same thing. So I think if there's one thing I want you to take out of this is knowing that you're not alone in whatever it is that you're going through at work. And I know negotiating for your salary can be one of the toughest things. Some of the stuff that we're going to go over, I teach this in about 2 hours, so we've got 17 minutes and 29 seconds. I'm going to speak extremely fast. Don't worry, you've got my email. You'll follow up with me after with questions, but hopefully my New York fast talking can also make sense here. So I hate negotiating, right? So many mindsets that we bring into negotiating, a lot of women in particular, where we're dreading it. We have a lot of fear around it, a lot of baggage around it, especially if we've been told no before. I think before you can begin to go over the talking points and the strategies, you really have to get yourself into the right mindset. And maybe I can convince you to sort of look at it in a bit of a different way. Okay, so what to charge, right? This is probably the most important thing. So many sources out there, Googling on the internet, that's actually the problem, is that there are almost too many sites out there, and I feel like almost all of them don't quite seem applicable to your situation. So I want to help us navigate through that and even come up with ways that we can start talking to our networks about it, which is also very uncomfortable. So how do I talk about my wins without feeling weird? Right? You're not going to walk in there and just say, this is the number, give it to me. Right? You're going to say, this is the number I want, and here's the evidence that I've demonstrated all year to show you that I am worth this money that I'm asking for. But as women, we tend to be socialized, I think, to not brag, right? To not really speak up, to be people-pleasing, and so then when we talk about our wins, somehow it feels like we're being self-promotional, and that we believe if we sort of keep our heads down, work hard, we'll be recognized, right? And that's not really how jobs work. Unfortunately, you have to also be talking about why you're great while being great. And then, I'm freaking out, right? Because you've learned, you've gotten your head in the right place. You've learned what number you're going to ask for. You're able to demonstrate your wins. But guess what? You walk in there. I've done this before. I'm completely prepared. And then all of a sudden, I find myself beginning with like the lowest number, or all of a sudden, I'm like negotiating myself backwards. My bottom line just completely evaporated because I didn't take the time to really work on some anti-anxiety stuff. Breathing is one thing, but I think there are some other tricks that I hope I can share with you that'll help get you into a place where when you are starting to feel nerves, you're able to hold your ground. And then how do I respond when? Depending on if you're negotiating for a new job or in a current job, I'll go over a couple of sort of frequently asked scenarios that I have people during these town halls, they've brought to me and what to do. Although I should mention one size does not fit all. I'm not a doctor. I'm not prescribing this to you. I mean, this really is a framework, I think, that you can sort of fit in the relationship that you have with your company. And the two things that really, for me, the reason I'm super passionate about this is because money is power, money is freedom, money is also your value, it's your self-worth. Money is sort of everything. And there were two statistics in particular that motivated me to start Ladies Get Paid. One statistic was the fact that today's 60%, I think now, of today's college grads are women. It's certainly the majority, which is awesome. But less than 22% of women are making it past middle management, okay? I don't know if you feel that in your companies where women get to a certain place and then they're like getting stuck, right? Or they're getting to a certain role. Maybe it's admin, maybe it's chief marketing officer, but then all of a sudden there's a whole group of other people at the company who tend to be white men, right? So that was a statistic that really bothered me. And then another statistic was the fact that Hispanic women make 55 cents to the dollar. And no, it is not the 78 cents to the dollar that we tend to think it is. That wage gap, that is a white woman statistic. And I think finding out for me that it was 55 cents to the dollar, it's not, what could I do? It really was, how could I not do something? And also the other thing about salary negotiation is because of the wage gap, women are losing about $500,000 over the course of their lifetime due to this. And if you're a woman of color, you're losing $1 million over the course of your lifetime because it keeps getting compounded. Okay, so why am I bringing that up? To me, salary negotiation is really sort of the only way that as an individual you can have some impact. Because we can't keep waiting for our bosses and the government to do things. We have to take some agency, as exhausting as that is, right? So that's go make more money. Go make more money. All right, so when you think of having to negotiate, how does that make you feel? Please don't be shy, just shout it out. I've heard it before, you're in good company. Anxious? Uncomfortable? Vomit? I know her, so I planted her there. Yeah, vomit, right? Well, first, okay, just like in any sort of, I don't know why I keep coming back to AA here. Clearly, I want to go to the cocktail hour after. But you have to admit these things first. You have to say, I'm freaked out. This scares me first before we can take next steps to figuring it out. So here, I think, are a couple of misconceptions that women have around salary negotiation that kind of lead us to wanting to vomit. And by the way, when I say this, I would love you to raise your hand and show me that you feel this, I'm not alone. I think that's extremely important to everybody else in the room. When you make a public display, me too, that is a huge effect. I'm worried they won't like me. Good, thank you. Yay, I like it when men also suffer. I appreciate that. Thanks. Okay, so I'm worried they won't like me. A lot of this comes down to how women are socialized, right? To be people pleasers, always accommodating others, to not disrupt, right? To be quiet. So the fear that they won't be liked by speaking up, asking for what you want, pushing back, we're concerned that we might actually be jeopardizing the relationship, right? Well, hold on. Negotiating is an expected part of the process of having a job. Everybody does it, or everybody should be doing it. I also like to do a little bit of a gut check. Every time you have one of these fears, you go, would a man feel that way? Now, I don't mean to generalize, but he probably wouldn't. So that can sometimes help you there. So being fearful that by pushing back, you might not be liked is, I think, having this assumption that you're not supposed to negotiate. And you are. I also think it's not really, for me, it's more, what do you say? It's more how you said it, right? So you could see this, I think, as an opportunity to go in there and be well-researched, right? Okay, well research, you're thoughtful, you're prepared, right? And you clearly value yourself. So now I, as the employer, I think, well, if she values herself, okay, then I should value her, right? So I would see this as an opportunity to look fantastic in front of them. I feel lucky to have the opportunity. Or just, I feel lucky in my life in general, right? I think a lot of times we kind of take the power away from our own accomplishments by ascribing it to luck. I do think there's a difference between being grateful for something and having gratitude, right? You absolutely should and can have appreciation for the job, but they should feel lucky to have you, right? Because by you saying, I feel lucky to have this, I think you're inherently putting yourself underneath them. Very expensive for them to lose you. You know, let's say that you're negotiating at your current company, right, and they lose you. US companies lose upwards of, at this point, I think it's like $300 billion a year in lost revenue due to attrition. Trust me, they want you to be there as long as possible. If you are a prospective candidate in San Francisco for a software engineer, it can cost $24,000 to lose you. That's the high end. Point being, imagine the hirer having to go back to their boss and say, she walked out. She said no, right? So you're both there trying to make it work. Do I need to underprice myself to be competitive? A lot of freelancers feel this way. This is a relationship that needs to work for you also. So I think when you underprice yourself, it's going to catch up with you. You're going to end up getting resentful, burnt out, unproductive. So just be aware that that tends to happen when you underprice yourself. I also think because everything that you're going to make the case around will be rooted in the market, you're saying this is the market rate, right? So you get what you pay for, right? We pay a lot for luxury goods because we deem them valuable. Right? So if you walk in there and you underprice yourself, then you're no longer the luxury good, right? But it's in the market value. I'm not saying be insane, right? So by you coming in strong within the market rate, why would you underprice yourself, right? And you're also undercutting all of us. I mean, back to those statistics, right? If you come in and you undercut yourself, you come in and you undercut yourself, you just did it for all of us, right? And that's something I want you to remember out of this. You're not alone, and I want you to negotiate for everybody in here. So please, for the rest of our sake, go get more money for yourself. So it feels like me against them. If you're on the other side of the table, it's them, you, okay. You're both on the same side of the table. You're on the same team trying to figure out how to make it work. How can you be the most, negotiating is creative problem solving. That's really what it is. What are all the ways that you could make this work? And I try to think about what's the definition of a compromise, and to me it's really two people have to give up something to get something. Both sides have to do that. And then I'm afraid I might lose the opportunity. The fact of the matter is the strongest negotiators are the ones who are willing and able to walk away. That is probably not most people in this country. If you really, really want something or you really need something, you will take it. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't try to negotiate. But I have certainly been in that position where especially when I first started my company, I would do things for free, even though I was ladies get paid, because I really needed it, right? So I totally get that. But here are two things you can do if you are fearful that you might lose the opportunity. One, have savings. Always have money, right? Back to money is freedom. Please never be dependent on any one thing, any one person. If you need to get out of there, you need to have a financial cushion, right? Also, you should always be interviewing, or always have kind of one eye open, right? You're here, you're networking. These are future jobs for you. So when you are afraid to lose the opportunity, which many of us can feel when we're negotiating, remember that you did this. Okay, so how do I know what to charge? My gosh. All right, so Glassdoor, you've probably all heard of that. I'm going to give you two other sites that I think are quite helpful. Payscale. I don't know if you've used Payscale before. There's also Fairy Godboss. And that's for women. Those are excellent sites. Make sure you need to root it in your context. These cannot be random numbers. I want you to try to get as granular as possible. Okay, so I'm an art director from New York. I'm 29 years old. I'm applying for a company that has 16 people. It's a startup, right? In New York, right? So location, size of the company, your years of experience, right? Your age. So those are things to think about. Beyond that, if you went to college, can you try to go back to them and see if their alumni network can help you? I got a lot of student loans. I'm still trying to get my money's worth out of them. So, they could be a resource to help you. You can also reach out to LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, actually, that's a great resource. Reach out to headhunters and recruiters as well. Just send them a cold message on LinkedIn and tell them that you're doing some research about how much to charge. right? And the worst thing that can happen to you is they don't respond. The best thing that can happen is now you're on their radar as a potential candidate for future jobs. Do know, let's say you work for a company that routinely hires headhunters, okay? Headhunters take about 10 to 25% on top of your salary. So if your company is doing that, trust me, they have more budget for salary, right? Nothing against headhunters, I just need you to know that whatever your salary was, the company actually had more to give because they did hire a headhunter. But they're a treasure trove of information, so go find them on LinkedIn and reach out to them. Asking real people, super awkward, right? How many of you talk to your friends about money at all? How many of you guys know how much your friends make? Yeah, really good conversation to have. Tell them I told you to do it. Tell them that the fate of women depended on you. But one thing that you can do is, all right, so you might be thinking, in my network, there's nobody who could really help me. They're not in my industry or whatever it is. It's actually not about your network. Okay? It's about your network's network. All right, but how do you tap into them? Make it easy on them. I want you to write up just a couple of sentences of exactly what you're looking for. Right, it could be that description, the bullet points of my age, location, company, and you're looking for a salary range, right? And does anybody know somebody like this? And so people start passing it on. And if nobody's comfortable telling you how much they make, well, you can make it easy for them by saying, here's the range I found. Am I off base? Yes or no? And you never have to ask anybody point blank, how much do you make? What's the range? So keep that in mind. And by the way, make sure you're talking to white men as well. I know it's kind of funny to say that, but we have this private online network as part of Ladies Get Paid. And these women, they're obviously talking about how much they make and negotiating. And at some point I jump in there and I have to remind them that they can't just keep talking to a bunch of women. If we're the least paid people, you should probably talk to the most paid people. And so I would say make it a goal for yourself. Who are 6 real life people that you can ask about how much they make? Yeah, it's really hard, but you just sticking to Glassdoor is doing yourself a disservice. It's not just about the numbers that you're finding. When you go in to negotiate, I want you to tell them all of the sources you looked into. I talked to 6 people. There was a headhunter. I went on pay scale. You are saying all those things because the more research and evidence you have, it's like you're a detective or a lawyer. You're more believable. You're way more stronger to tell me your sources. And then, you have to pick numbers. So you're not just going in with one number and hoping that works. There's actually 3. Because this is going to be kind of a volley back and forth, you do need to have sort of comebacks in your back pocket. So you've got the pay band. It's called pay band, by the way. Top number. So I'm worth it. I actually would say go beyond it. I'm worth it is the number that you can say, the highest number you can say without busting out laughing. Yeah, now you're laughing. By the way, if you are laughing, and we'll do this in just a minute, it's a good exercise for you to go, well, hold on, why am I laughing? Would a man laugh, right? Take a minute to kind of examine that. I'm feeling good is the middle of the pay band. You'd be proud to have it. And, I respect myself too much. That's the bottom line. People say bottom line a lot. I think it's easy to say and a lot harder to figure out. For me, this is kind of, it sounds like a formula, but it's not. I write out my entire budget of all the things that make me thrive, not just survive, what I love doing, right? I don't want to give up my mani-pedis, right? It's not silly, it makes me feel good. Second column, all the things that job gives me, right? Which could be, it's a fancy title, right? And I'm going to put it on my resume and leverage that, right? Maybe I have flexibility. And so I take a cold, hard look at all the things in my life that I would have to give up for those things that company's giving me. And I think sometimes seeing it side by side in some godforsaken Excel spreadsheet actually makes you realize, you know what, I don't want to give that up. Right? So just take time when you're figuring out your bottom line because you cannot go beneath it. You really can't because you're going to be resentful. Okay, I just have to go way quicker than I wanted to, so bear with me. So if they don't have enough money, this may happen, always ask. I know folks that work for nonprofits, they get very nervous about asking. You still got to ask, do it for us. But here are some other things that you can get. And every company should be happy to give this to you because for many of these things, it actually costs the company no money, but brings you a lot of value, right? So flexibility, higher commission. I'm just going to talk about the education and conferences for a second. How many of you all got your companies to pay to come here? Good. Okay. By the way, when you're negotiating full compensation, also known as full comp, I want you to bring this up after you've had the money conversation, right? You figured out your money, now let's talk about full comp. Why? Otherwise, they can use this as leverage to get your money down, right? Okay? So bring this up as kind of the last conversation point. Now, for education and conferences, you don't just say, I want these things, I deserve these things. You pick the ones that you want the most, and then you have to position it as a benefit to the company, right? So you probably know this because you're here and you asked for these tickets, but coming to a conference, that benefits the company because you're networking, it's business development, you're learning things. And not only that, maybe some of you, in order to get these tickets, you promised your boss, you know, I'm gonna go back, I'm gonna make a presentation of everything I learned, including this one, now give me more money, right? So like you can say that as part of this, right? So it's not just, I would like to go to conferences, it's great networking. I'd like to go to conferences and I'm gonna give a report when I come back. Workplace flexibility, I'm more productive. But guess what? Let's start out with 1 day a week and I'll give you a report at the end of the day of everything I did, right? So you're not demanding any of this. You're trying to make basically as compelling case as possible. Okay, so your wins, this can be very uncomfortable to talk about, especially if you don't feel like you've done things recently that you're incredibly proud of or see as wins. Think about your obstacles. You know, what were some challenges that got thrown your way this year and how you overcame them? You know, create a new job description for yourself. I think this is a good exercise. Look at the original job description when you first came, write up a new one, look at them. How much changed, right? The scope that changed. Maybe you now are working a few more people's jobs. Maybe it morphed entirely, right? That's crucial. You want to show that as it's demonstrating that you went above and beyond. And knowing your superpowers. If you want to Google this more, it's sometimes called inalienable powers, superpowers. They're basically things that make you you, that are not really tangible, but everybody around you knows them, feels them. Positivity, enthusiasm, you're the leader of the team, you're organized, you develop processes, you've been at the company for a long time, you've got some institutional knowledge. This can be hard to figure out on your own, so one thing I'd love you to do walking out of here is like just write down 1 or 2 people in your life, coworker, friends, who can give you perspective on this. You want to bring those up, don't take them for granted, and don't assume they know this about you. And then telling your story. This is hard too. So it's called the STAR method, if you also want to Google that. STAR. Take a photograph of that so I don't have to read all of it. But basically, look at yourself like you're in a movie, right? And you're telling the story of this character. And be as dramatic and compelling as possible and write it all down, right? And then you're going to take bits and pieces of that and actually talk about it. And then know the impact. All this has to be tied to, you know, ROI, but sometimes what we do doesn't equal money that the company got, although if you're in sales, maybe it does. So try to do some digging around to see if what you did, how did it impact the company in some way, right? You're within an ecosystem that does make money. So sometimes you need to just ask your manager, actually, that's a great person. What's my impact here? Right? If you don't know it, then you're probably not doing your job correctly. You should always know your impact. Okay, so getting your head in the game, and I'll be done in just a minute. And these are some of the anti-anxiety exercises I was talking about that I basically was doing before I got on stage. Okay, so writing out all of your fears. First of all, I want you to acknowledge them like I did in the beginning, right, where you admit it, because your emotions, your fears, it's like a bouncing ball. Think of it like a bouncing ball on a pool. Push it down. Right, but the ball's gonna keep bouncing up. Emotions, fears, same thing, right? Do not push it down. So when you look at them, right, all the fears you have, which could be, I'm afraid I'm gonna lose this opportunity, right, for one. What's the percentage that you think this actually could happen, right? Because you having the fear, I validate that. That's a real thing. But this coming to fruition, this fear coming to fruition, is that rational? Maybe the percentage that you're gonna be fired is 10%. Right, but then you have to decide, am I going to let 10% fuck up my negotiation, right? You really have to take a look at that percentage and decide how much weight you want to give it. Gaining perspective, looking at yourself like you're in a movie, right? You're walking in here, you're rooting for the main character, things tend to go well for the main character. I think we're a lot kinder to ourselves when we look at ourselves as somebody else, which is really sad, actually. Or even just being on a mountaintop looking down, that visual perspective actually sort of instantly gives you perspective and we can be kinder to ourselves. Accepting your fear when you're role playing, which I need you to do with your friends. When you're practicing, do not set the expectation that now I will be perfect, right? Don't say, now that I've practiced it, I won't do that thing again. Actually, when you're practicing and you stumble or whatever it is, accept that it probably will happen. And the reason I'm saying that is if you set this now massive expectation that you will be better because you practiced, well, when it doesn't go the way you wanted it to, you're going to get flustered. You've basically put on way more pressure than you needed to. So instead, just trust me that when you actually go in to negotiate, you'll have seen all of those emotions and things come up before. And because you're not surprised by them and you've essentially accepted them, you might find that it'll actually go away. Right? Oh, this is the time when my heart starts beating faster. Okay, this is the time when my palms get sweaty. It's not a new thing. So trust me, again, when you remove the element of surprise from this sort of stuff, it tends to dissipate. And then life is not a pass-fail test. Whenever I'm going into some kind of performance situation or something that does have a lot of pressure, the one thing that is my goal that I repeat over and over again is, what can I learn? Right? I'm hopeful that this is helpful to you, but I can't hope that if this is helpful to you, then I succeeded. If I didn't help you, then I failed. My God, that is totally out of my control, right? But if I walk off of here and I'm able to say, well, here's what I learned during this process and how I can make it better in the future, then that again is success. And then who you're doing this for. I don't know if I have time. This is just kind of the scenarios that people find themselves in. I could have them as questions or just go through really quickly. Or email me after. Basically, yeah, so if you want to write down, oh good, now you'll come to my website. Okay, go to ladiesgetpaid.com, and you can also email me at hello@ladiesgetpaid.com. I can answer all of your questions when it comes to this. When I asked who are you doing this for, I would love you to do it for the women in Saudi Arabia, because on Saturday at 5 p.m., they were now allowed to drive, legally.